Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this YouTube. We're really glad to have you here. My name is Joanna and I'm the co-founder of UniPear, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm really excited to have here three incredible STEM role models who are here to talk about their experiences in STEM. A little bit more information about UniPear in case this is the first time you've stumbled across us. We're an organisation that helps minority and disadvantaged students get into Oxford by pairing them with current students who offer them one-on-one mentoring for absolutely free throughout their application process, all the way from helping them set their personal statements all the way through to interview practice and just giving them a bit of a flavour for what life is like at Oxford. We also have a number of partners who provide lots of additional support and courses, often worth hundreds of pounds for our mentees, which is really wonderful. And we're really proud that over this past year, we've had over 400 mentors and mentees with us, of which 60% received offers to Oxford out of the mentees. So we're really, really happy with that and grateful. And this event is in collaboration with Women in Tech. Now, Women in Tech is an international organisation with a double mission. Firstly, to close the gender gap, and secondly, to help women embrace technology. The organisation focuses on four primary areas that are a call to action, which are education, entrepreneurialism, social inclusion, and science and innovation. So that's all it for introductions. I'm now going to let my wonderful girls here, mentors, introduce themselves. Why don't we start with my screen? So Kira, you're up first.
Yep. Hi, I'm Kira. I'm a second year computer science and philosophy student at Hertford College in Oxford. I chose Oxford and my degree because Oxford is like one of the only places that offers the combination that I'm doing, and the course is very interesting, and we get to look at like an even balance of computer science and philosophy, and I came on quite a few open days, and it just seemed like a really interesting course and somewhere that I wanted to be.
I guess that's a good reason as any to want to come and study in Oxford. Thanks so much for your introduction, Kira. Nishi, you're next on my screen.
Hi, I'm a second year chemistry student and I'm at Christ Church. And yeah, I also chose Oxford because that's the only uni compared to Cambridge that does the straight chemistry course, so that's why I chose it. But I also really like the city, and yeah, I am really enjoying my course. The workload is intense, but I find it really interesting, so yeah.
It's great to hear that you're enjoying it as well. That you know, the aspiration is the same as the experience. And finally, Beth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, so I'm Beth and I'm now in my second year of engineering at St. Hilda's College. My pronouns are she, her. But yeah, I think like when I was sort of choosing what degree I wanted to do, I think it took quite a while for me to realise that engineering was like the ideal thing. Because I've always loved maths, and I think I didn't really discover that I loved physics until kind of A levels. And then it's sort of like the practical application of those, which is quite cool because it's sort of like less intense, kind of one thing or another. And I quite liked the fact that it was a broad course, which they do at Oxford. And they don't really do that in many other places. I think they're doing it more so now, which is really good. But yeah, I've loved it. And the city is just such, like, it's incredible. So it's a really nice like place to live, which is kind of another reason, I guess, why I applied for Oxford. But yeah, I'm loving it too.
Absolutely. And I guess that gives hope for all the people who haven't yet decided what they want to do with their life, to know that you don't have to have it all figured out right yet. As yet. Anyway, thank you all so much for your wonderful introductions. I guess we'll kickstart with a bit of an easy starter question, or maybe it's really difficult, I guess, depending on how you want to see it. And that's why are you passionate about STEM? And anyone can answer this one.
Well, I can go, but I think with computer science, especially for me, I think it's like so relevant, and there's so many different areas you can work in. And I think kind of no matter what your broader interests are in the world, if you like computer science, you'll be able to find a job that somewhat matches up to those. So I think it's just like a nice sector that has like lots of different topics in it, and you can kind of do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I think I kind of like that's sort of similar for me as well. I think if it's something that you enjoy, like if you enjoy kind of like problem solving, like maths, physics, kind of anything really to do with STEM, kind of getting involved in it is just so amazing. It's so rewarding because there's so many practical applications that make such an impact. And I feel as though kind of being able to do what you enjoy and making some kind of impact positively is quite an exciting thing. And so that's probably what I think about it anyway.
Yeah, I think with chemistry, especially with the course at Oxford, there are a lot of different modules where you cover different aspects. So it's quite physics heavy if you want it to be maths heavy as well. There's also supplementary subjects that you can do in other sciences, like in biology and anything that you're interested in, which is good. Even, for example, if you wanted to go into a technology career, that's it's very easy to do. Like a lot of my labs have been about programming. We've done some programming, we've done some coding here and there and applying it within our subject as well. So it opens a lot of doors and it can be interesting. You can sort of tailor it towards your interest, I think. But yeah, and even like the research side is also there with chemistry, especially in your fourth year. You could do like a research project on whatever interests you. So there's a lot of options available for you, which is really good.
It's great. And like bearing in mind how like all of you guys are in STEM degrees and you're really enjoying it and you're passionate about it for so many reasons, why then would you think that, I guess, twofold, firstly diversity and secondly access is so important to STEM as degrees but also as careers and as subjects?
I think I'd say that like diversity and access is really important for, I can talk kind of from an engineering point of view, because we're obviously having to solve so many kind of problems and like situations that are in the real world that you need creativity and you need people that think differently. And so if you're always kind of hiring the same sort of stereotypical engineer, you're not going to find the best solutions because you're kind of limiting your sort of starting point. And so like diversity, I think, is really, really important if we want to kind of do something different, which is obviously what everybody's kind of pushing towards. And so I'd say from that point of view, yeah, it's really crucial.
Yeah, I think like Beth said, just from computer science and I guess general STEM like background, it's the things that you're making and contributing to the world are like very important, and like things that help our world function. So if you don't have a diverse group of people working on all these things, like you end up with products and tech that maybe doesn't consider certain groups' needs or wants, and you just end up with like, I guess, tech that's made like exclusively for men without thinking of women in mind, or like without thinking of different minorities. So I think it is very important.
Yeah, and even from a different point of view, I think it's not really encouraged enough that women should like study like STEM subjects, because a lot of people, or a lot of women will have interests in the sciences, but they might be discouraged from their school or just like other experience that they have of like stereotypes of men studying these subjects and doing better in that, which is just not the case. So I think like the most important thing is just, it's important to encourage women and people from diverse backgrounds to explore their interests if it is in STEM, because everyone's capable of doing it, and I think that's what people are realizing now. So yeah.
And what you've mentioned there is really interesting, because it's not only about like why it's important, but also some of like the barriers that women face in not only getting into STEM careers, but before that, even considering STEM careers. So I was wondering, almost as a bit of a curveball question, it's a bit of an impossible one to solve, but what would you guys say is the biggest barrier to women getting involved in STEM, whether that be from personal experience or just your opinions broader, more broadly, what would you say is the biggest barrier that women face?
Well, I think now, like, at least for me, I still get kind of nervous at the idea that like my future workplace will be majority men, and maybe I'll be talked over or not as respected as an employee. And I think because I went to an all-girls school before I came to uni, and it was like very encouraging environment, and I was a bit worried of like how big a difference it might be without being in that like all-woman environment. And I think that is a very big barrier, this perception of the STEM and the computer science world as like so strongly male dominated, that as a woman you don't really want to put yourself in that environment and like feel like you might be going into an environment which is going to kind of feel quite discouraging for you.
Yeah, I think that is really true. Like, it is definitely a different kind of like setting to a lot of different subjects, I guess, when you're in the lecture theatre and you're kind of like, oh, okay, cool. But I think also for me, I think what I found was kind of, obviously the people that you see kind of in the media that are kind of like, I don't know, head of Formula One teams, like obviously is massively male dominated. And like my dad is an engineer and his dad's an engineer. And I think I just kind of saw it always as like for sort of like old men. And I was sort of like, well, that looks boring. Like, why would I want to do that? And so I'd never really even considered it. And it wasn't until I was sort of like thinking about the facts of like, what do I enjoy, that I kind of realized that, oh, actually, this isn't boring. Like, this is really cool. And it could be for me too. And so I kind of think that maybe like a barrier is potentially the fact that there's not that many people that you can necessarily feel you're able to relate to that are doing things that you could actually find really interesting. And I think if I'd had seen kind of someone that I felt able to relate to in those positions, I might have thought sooner like, oh, that would actually be really cool. I could enjoy that as well. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think especially in my school, it was mostly the boys that would be going for the STEM subject. So, and I was like the only girl applying for chemistry, and so it was a bit intimidating, you know, to be applying to like such a big university with a subject like that as well. But also because I'm quite keen about having pursuing a career in technology, and I think that might be quite like male dominated. So that is something that concerns me as well. But even like platforms like this and things like that is really helpful to progress that and make those changes. So.
Yeah, it's almost as if you're sort of discouraged when you're younger because you don't see the role models, but then you also don't want to be one of the few to change the fact that there's not very many role models. And then in the first place, you're not even considering it because it doesn't actually seem at all interesting because it's all very old, white, cisgendered, privileged men who are kind of balding and maybe have like a grease patch from some tinkering with some sort of car, and it all just doesn't seem very relevant. So it's all a bit of a cycle, but you guys are here, so clearly something's going right somewhere in the chain. No, it's definitely something that I agree with. And even in my degree where I do economics and management, so it's not explicitly STEM related, but still I think in Oxford it's like the fourth worst in terms of gender ratios. So it's still prevalent in other areas. And I definitely feel, having also come from a girls' school, that I feel like I always am the person who could have, you know, raised your hand, said something or gotten an answer wrong. And I'm just, you know, it's a kind of second guessing that you do. And no one's overtly doing anything wrong. It's just a sort of almost a sort of sentiment of the culture that takes time to change and is changing, I think, as well. Given that, I guess, thinking about the flip side of the positives, and like now that you've actually broken that barrier and you're in STEM degrees, how are you finding your degrees? And thinking about what you did for A-level, how do you think that that's mapped on between A-level and your degrees?
Yeah, so with chemistry, I think a lot of people will say that it is one of the more intense STEM degrees. And it is, I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of work. I think in first year, it's more sort of just finding your feet and adapting to the way that you go about doing your problem sheets, because it is different to A-level. At A-level, you always just have one textbook or so, and then you just answer questions from it, or you have a PowerPoint or something. But when you start at Oxford, you have to use lecture notes and a lot of different types of books, and it can be a bit confusing. So it was more just sort of getting used to it, but it sort of, I guess, once I settled in, it did make a bit more sense. And this year I found it much easier, because I'm able to organize my time, and I know how long, for example, a problem sheet will take me, so I know when to start it. But at A levels, so I just did the bare minimum subjects. I only did maths and chemistry, and then I did English lit, which obviously isn't useful for chemistry. But I think physics would have helped me, but you do get taught it, so it's not really a big issue if you haven't done it. And even with further maths, you also get taught it in your first year, like the topics that you need, and they are taught quite well. So I don't think it's a big issue if you don't have those subjects. It's not something to stress about. If you want to do it, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so like as I said before, like I am really enjoying my degree, but it is very intense. I think similar to chemistry from that point of view, like there's quite a lot of hours, because you do like a full day of labs a week in first year, and you have like 2 problem sheets a week, which probably take about kind of 10 hours each, although this year I'd say they're taking a bit more. But yeah, so there's quite a lot kind of going on, but if you enjoy the subject, then it kind of doesn't matter so much. I don't know, I think I've really kind of enjoyed it, and it definitely does take adapting to a new learning style, because it is very different from A levels. It is a lot more kind of like personal teaching, with kind of like when you have tutorials with your tutor, there's just like you, another student, and the tutor. And I think it is something to kind of get used to, but I've personally found it really useful, because it kind of makes you kind of take more ownership of your learning, I think. And if you enjoy it, then that's no bad thing, I guess. With A levels, I did maths, further maths, physics, and psychology. I took psychology because I kind of fancied doing something a bit different, so it wasn't all just like maths. I tried to still be able to construct a sentence, and so yeah. But I think it's quite, I'd say further maths was probably like most similar to kind of how it's been going, but again, like you don't have to take further maths, you just have to do maths and physics. And so if you're not doing further maths, like that is completely fine. Just make sure that you enjoy maths. Like if you haven't taken further maths because you don't like maths, then maybe engineering might not be so enjoyable for you. But yeah, I think just making sure that you enjoy it is kind of like the best preparation that you can have kind of going into it, because it's what you'll spend quite a while doing. But yeah, I have really enjoyed it, and I'd say it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I'm also really enjoying my degree, but it is also a lot of work. I think I found like first term of first year really difficult to learn how to, I guess, like structure my own work days, and like how many hours I should be putting into like essays and problem sheets. But once you get the hold of that, like it's okay, it's like quite manageable. And for my A levels, I did maths, further maths, computer science, and religious studies. Like Beth, I like threw religious studies in there as like an extra option, because I was intending to just do computer science, but I really enjoyed the philosophy side, so now I'm doing a joint degree. But I think that from the computer science standpoint, maths and further maths, like again, definitely the most important A levels. And again, you don't need to have done further maths, but a lot of the content is like quite relevant to the degree, and you do get taught it again. But like if you have the opportunity to do a further maths A level and it isn't too much work, then I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and I guess, Kira, like this is a question that will only ever be relevant to you, but how are you finding the like intersection of a STEM degree and something that is sort of almost at the opposite end of what people would consider STEM, especially having not explicitly studied it at A level. Like, how have you found philosophy firstly, and then the intersection of it with computer science?
Yeah, I really enjoy philosophy. I think it's so interesting and it's so broad. And now that now I'm in second year, everything I do is an option in philosophy. So I get to like really tailor and choose what parts of philosophy I'm interested in, which does mean that I've like chosen to do things like philosophical logic, which is more mathsy and like not really essay based at all. But I think, yeah, it's really interesting. And I think doing the degree as a joint subject, there's not like many courses that are like explicitly like conjoining of the two, but in first year we did like look at Alan Turing in philosophy and like his impact on computer science, and like things like Turing machines and the Turing test and things like that, and that was really, really interesting and also quite relevant for second year computer science. And also I think we get a lot of guidance as a subject of like different philosophical topics to choose that can like help complement the computer science side of the degree. So yeah, it's really interesting. I'm really having a good time studying it.
Yeah, it was something that I, believe it or not, doing E&M was considering as a bit of a rough option back in the day, but I think it's a super interesting intersection. And I think it goes to show that STEM, it's not always a very traditional subjects or career tracks that you see. Like, there's an application of STEM almost everywhere, even in something so different as philosophy. Tying into that and drawing the others back in, if you had to like, what would be like your main sell as to why someone should choose the degree that you're studying, or if you want to broaden it, like STEM more generally?
That's quite a big question. I think main thing would be kind of, it has like the kind of creative aspect with like the problem solving and the practical applications of like subjects that like I personally really enjoy. And I think if you are enjoying STEM, like maths is quite a good thing to kind of have in your toolbox as such. But I kind of think that, yeah, it's kind of the creativity side with the kind of maths STEM subject side, which I think is just like a really, really cool combination that is really interesting. And kind of anything you're interested in, you can find an area in which engineering is applied in that, whether that's from kind of like renewable energies to kind of racing cars and stuff like that. And so there's sort of like something for everyone. And it has like a really good range of things that people find interesting and keep your brain moving as we enter old age.
Oh, sorry. I guess with chemistry, if you're keen to study something quite rigorous and challenging, it's a very good subject to do. I wasn't particularly expecting it to be this challenging, but I feel like I don't regret it. Like, I still really enjoy it, because I think it's good to be challenged, because in the once you start working and pursuing different careers, that's what you're going to be doing anyways. You're going to be challenged and put in different environments, and a lot of chemistry does require that, just as a degree and the things that you learn from it. Yeah, and I think I've learned a lot about myself in terms of how to organize my time and sort of where my interests lie in the degree itself. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it if you like chemistry, if you like the modules that they do, then it's a good subject to study, I think.
Yeah, I think if you enjoy maths or problem solving and you want a degree that's like a little bit more like directly applicable to like future careers and things like that, then computer science is a really good option. And doing it joint with philosophy, I think, yeah, if you find yourself interested in like logic and maybe you want to not just be doing maths constantly and you want like a little bit of a break, then any of like, and Oxford has maths and philosophy, physics and philosophy, computer science and philosophy, like all those degrees are really interesting. And I think if you're like me and I wasn't too sure about completely committing to like a 100% STEM degree, it was really nice to be able to choose a degree where I can still like entertain my other interests outside of STEM.
Absolutely. And they're all valid. I wish I'd kind of heard these pitches maybe when I was deciding, although I will say that the STEM subjects that I did I did maths, computer science, economics and Spanish, so also there are a lot of those options that I couldn't have done, but I think it's all really fascinating and also really interesting to think about. I mean, we study these degrees because we love them, right, and we enjoy the subjects, we wouldn't do it otherwise, but thinking about after uni and about the careers that STEM can kind of offer, and there's a whole wealth from whichever STEM subject you're studying, and that's like the great thing about a lot of STEM subjects, is that they open so many doors. And I was wondering if maybe you guys could give a little bit of insight as to the types of careers that you might get into or might be typical for someone who studies your degree.
I think, well, with computer science, like obviously going into like technology jobs for like software development and anything really within computer science. I think a lot of computer science and philosophers tend to like to study things like AI and machine learning, and tend to go into jobs in those fields, just because I think if you're doing philosophy especially, like it's quite interesting to think about like knowledge representation and computers being intelligent and stuff like that. But also with computer science jobs, like I think pretty much any STEM degree can kind of funnel you in that direction, especially maths and physics as well. And similarly, you can take a computer science degree and work in another STEM field as well.
Yeah, for engineering, because we're currently like you do engineering science, so general engineering, and then in your third year is where you begin to specialize. And so I'm thinking I'm going to mainly specialize in mechanical engineering and then do a bit of control engineering as well. But you can specialize in like civil, chemical, like there's so many different kind of types of engineering that you can sort of specialize in, or you can keep it really broad. It means that kind of when you graduate and you come to kind of pick your kind of career path as such, there's such a crazy amount of different things you can do. And a lot of people go into like finance, kind of like accounting. There's also people that go into like law, like even if you're doing a subject because you really enjoy it, and then you kind of get to the end of it and think, actually, this would be a really cool path, then everybody loves a STEM degree. Like it is really weird, but like you can kind of do what you want with it. But yeah, there's so many different options, which is quite exciting, I think. I'm not planning on going into finance, but the options there, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, as Beth was saying, there are so many options that you can go into, really. Like with finance, you can go into that, even like the technical side of finance, like technology and investment banking, you can do that as well. A lot of banks nowadays are looking for students from many different principles, so it doesn't really matter like STEM subjects, whatever STEM subject you're doing, you have that opportunity. I guess specifically with chemistry, you could go into typically with pharmaceutical companies as well. I know they do internships and placement years and all sorts of things, which are always available, and they look really interesting as well. Even in your fourth year, you do a research project and you join a group who are researching anything that interests you, and you can join them and kind of develop your interests further. So yeah, lots of options available, which is really good doing the STEM subject, to be honest.
It's definitely that thing of like, technically you can do anything and you'll absolutely be one of the most employable people ever, especially with a STEM degree. But also there's so many like specific like degrees just for that subject or intersections with that subject that you also might not consider. Like I know someone who did like a PhD in physics at Oxford and is also a ballerina and does these really cool like robotics ballerina show dances, which is a career that you probably don't get on one of those like personality tests of things that you'd be really good for, but nonetheless is a really interesting career and a blend of passions, I guess. Thinking like almost hopping course and going back to this idea of STEM in the context of Oxford, of which anyone who goes to Oxford is also extremely employable, but also probably is a bit nerdy like us and, you know, really enjoys the subject that they're doing, which so far has been what everyone has said. Then I would love to know like how you found not necessarily your subject in itself, but your experience at Oxford and the broader context that you find yourself in, and how that's been as a woman in STEM, but also just as a student at Oxford.
I kind of feel as though like my confidence in my ability to learn has like massively increased. Because I think when I first kind of arrived, I would like constantly kind of question myself or kind of think, God, this is really hard. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it. But I think by the point that you're kind of here in like your second year, you've done it so many times over, you've learned so many new things, and you've kind of like sort of come up to a challenge and then got through it, that I now kind of know that even if I don't understand something, that eventually I will get there and kind of it's going to be fine in a way, I guess. And also I think for me, the kind of tutorial system works really well, and has kind of really helped with that too, because you'll sit in a tutorial talking about the problem sheets that you've just been working on, and they might ask kind of you sort of like, oh, how did you do this question, whatever. And like at the beginning I sort of was like, oh gosh, like I'm not sure, I kind of didn't feel necessarily the most confident to kind of like take my tutor through how I answered a question, whereas now it just like it feels like just a really casual conversation, and you kind of learn so many new ways that you could have done something. Even if you manage to solve the problem, there are so many different ways that you find that other people have done it, and that's just really cool. And I think that my kind of confidence to like go through those things has massively increased, which I think is quite an important thing in kind of degree level, but also kind of in the workplace. And I think that has really helped by kind of how challenging Oxford has been kind of like academically. And so yeah, I think that has been definitely something that I've learned. But yeah, living in Oxford is really, really nice, and I really love that. And so yeah.
Yeah, I think when I came to Oxford, I suffered seriously with culture shock. I don't know what it was. It was just, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just terrified of studying and even socializing as well. I was quite antisocial to begin with. Like even in the lab, because we did labs at my school, but they were very basic and I didn't really know what I was doing. So when I started doing labs at uni, you just kind of think like, oh, all these people are at Oxford, like they must know exactly what they're doing. And it looks like that. It looks like they all know what they're doing, but you kind of forget that you're also there and that you're learning, and so is everyone else. So the moment that you realize that you can actually do it and you can do your degree because you've been chosen for it, it does become a little bit easier. I used to be a bit nervous in my tutorials to begin with, for a while actually, but once I started to settle in and sort of be a bit more confident in myself and my ability with my work, it did become a lot easier, and my tutors were really sort of supportive, and they kind of just told me, they kept telling me from the beginning, like, you'll be fine. They knew that I was terrified, and they kept telling me that, like, you'll feel better soon, don't worry, you're just trying to settle in. So that helped a lot, and the friends that I made at Oxford helped so much. At first I was sort of meeting people who already had friends from their old school, so that was a bit intimidating because I just kind of thought that, oh, like, I don't know anyone here, but over time it became so much easier. So yeah.
Yeah, I also think when I first came here, I did like suffer with imposter syndrome like quite badly, especially in my first term, because it just felt like everyone else, especially in computer science, was like so much smarter, and they all knew like was so much better at maths than me and like knew exactly what they were doing. But you know, your tutors are like such lovely people and they really want to help you learn, and like my tutors were very encouraging with like in tutorials with helping me like get better at my math skills and things like that. And I think being in Oxford more generally, I was really excited to come here because I was just like, I can't wait to be in an environment where like everyone is really passionate about their subject and everyone is like really excited to learn new things. And it's like, I have, you know, friends who are doing like different degrees than me, but they're still really interested to hear about what I'm learning about. And they'll tell me about what they're learning about. And it's just like a very nice environment, I think, of everyone just being like jointly trying their best at their degrees and like really wanting to work hard at learning.
Yeah, I think it's a common like sentiment that you'll hear from everyone at the beginning. They were like, what am I doing here? And I think it's like that kind of cycle that everyone feels imposter syndrome, so they all try and big themselves up, so everyone else thinks that they're all way better, which makes it worse for themselves. And then it's just like that kind of thing where you increasingly think that everyone else is way better until you actually start to make really good friends with these people and realize that everyone is just trying to get along and really does not know what they're doing. But everyone is really lovely. I think that that's one of the best things, especially in Oxford or any collegiate university, because you get that sort of smaller, tight-knit group of friends. I don't think that I appreciated when I was applying to Oxford. I was like, yeah, college is great, but the idea that you have a series of faces that you will recognize time and time again every day, even if it's just that you recognize someone, that it makes it feel like you have a bit of a home there instead of seeing absolutely brand new faces each time, which can feel even more daunting as well, if not for all of the other traditions and history and the level of the work and stuff. So that's something that I particularly like about Oxford. And now that we've sold Oxford so brilliantly, and we've sold STEM so brilliantly, what advice would you give to people thinking of applying to a STEM degree or to your STEM degree, thinking both about like Oxford in particular, but also just generally with your other choices that you applied to, and the advice that you would give to someone going through that process?
Well, I think with computer science, like, I guess, you know, if you enjoy maths and you're like willing to work hard at learning new things, then like you can do a computer science degree. And I think most, like pretty much all computer science degrees are, you know, they don't require as a prerequisite having done any computer science before, and they'll like teach everything from the very basics. So as long as you've done maths, then you can definitely do it. And I think with applying to Oxford in particular, you have to do the maths admissions test for computer science, and just like practicing those types of questions. And at interviews, for the maths interviews, you get like very similar questions to those. I think interviews is something that like a lot of people get very nervous about. But I think if you just try and do your best to try and treat it as though it was a tutorial and you just were a student, because they're not there to like try and properly grill you on whether or not you can answer these maths questions on the spot. As long as you like, you know, say what you're thinking, and do your best at solving the questions, so they can see that you're like a good learner and you can learn new things, and pick up new ideas, then, you know, you're in with a really good shot. So
did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like a similar thing, to be fair. I think if you enjoy maths and if you enjoy physics as well, I guess I really loved maths and I was learning to love physics, I think. then it's just so worth like making an application. There was definitely like major points when I was looking at the admissions test, because you have to do the physics admissions test for engineering. And I kind of just panicked because I was like, I have absolutely no idea how to like answer this. Like you needed, well, it wasn't like a requirement, but I think physics, they said that kind of like 60% was sort of like a good kind of guess of where you were trying to get in the test. And I was just like, I felt like there was absolutely no way. And you were sort of going from kind of doing maybe like GCSEs and some kind of like AS levels and kind of needing like 80-90% to then just like not understanding anything. Like it's quite a big leap in kind of like change in mentality. And so I think it's just really important not to be put off, because I definitely nearly just didn't bother. And I'm so glad that I did. And I think that like the thing that it is good to kind of keep in mind is that you can apply, like go do as good as you can, like prepare a bit and just like kind of treat it as they can decide if they want me, and then we'll like go from there. Because I think when it came to like my interview, I got to the point where I was sort of kind of, I made sure I had other options that I was really happy to do. And so I had less pressure on myself, because I was sort of like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, then like, never mind. But I think treating the kind of interview as just kind of a conversation, going through a question, just saying everything that you think, even if you think that it's a stupid thing to think, because it just makes it so much easier for them. But I think it means that then the tutors then almost just have the pressure to decide, like, will this person suit our degree? Will this person kind of like do well in the kind of learning environment? Because it's not for everyone. And that doesn't mean that like you're not good at the subject or that you're not going to thrive doing your degree. I think it's just they have very specific things that they want to look for. And it's just whether you fit it or not. And so I kind of think it takes the pressure off yourself then. Like it's not a personal thing. It's not like, God, no, I can't get in. What's the point kind of thing. And so I think my advice would just be to kind of go for it and sort of see what happens. Because like, I'm guessing that like all of us, when we applied, we weren't thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna be in Oxford next year. If you just like, you don't, you kind of just think like, we'll give it a go and see what happens. And it works for some people and some people it doesn't, and like that's no issue. And so yeah, I'd say that's probably my advice on it.
Yeah, I think with the subject requirements, they want you to do maths and chemistry. I think further maths and physics, they strongly recommend something like that. And it's obviously useful if you've done it, but if you don't have it, like it's not something to stress about. I was so confused about whether I should take or not. I just went around in circles for so long about what subjects to do because I just didn't know. But it doesn't reduce your chances of getting in just because you don't have a subject, a recommended subject. That doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing well. That's not what the tutors are looking for. They're looking for how you can apply your knowledge with what you already know. So, but yeah, with regards to that, for interviews, it's just a case of being thorough, I guess. Like just going over your A-level, looking at questions online, and just thinking out loud as well. The tutors are there to prompt you throughout the interview process as well. So even if you don't know something, that's totally fine. Like it's normal to get things wrong. It's almost a good thing because at least you're thinking and you're making an effort. But yeah, that's the advice I would give with chemistry especially. But it is something that you just have to give it a go. As Beth said, I told myself like, no, I'm not getting it, because I just didn't want to have high hopes, because it is like upsetting if you don't make it or whatever. But it's good to give it a shot. It's worth the opportunity. You learn a lot throughout the application process as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually the points that you've made are all really important. It's like almost about this mindset of it's not the be all and end all. And I think, if I'd heard that when I was applying, I'd be like, oh, come on, like, stop it. It's really, stop telling me this, it's patronizing. But I think at each stage in your life, the next stage in your life that you get to, you always think, oh, that previous stage, you really put it into perspective and realize that it isn't as important as it was made out to be. And it's the same when you were doing A-levels and you're thinking about GCSEs and then thinking about applying to universities, once you started at university, you really thought, wow, I could have gone to another place and I would have been just as fine as I am here. And it really is a case of, I mean, lots of people who get into Oxford, lots of them will really, really struggle, and it's just not the right place for them, the same way that some people won't get into Oxford and really were absolutely worthy of getting in by all merits in terms of their like academic ability, but just wouldn't have suited or maybe would have. And it's just the kind of thing where once you're at a new place, you realize that it was all like a part in your journey, a part of your journey that needed to happen, but at the time was daunting, especially I can imagine for STEM degrees, which have a lot of contact, a lot of in-person time, a lot of things that are going on all the time at Oxford, and there are some brilliant like world-class places to be studying. As long as you're studying something that you're passionate about, and especially being a woman in STEM, it's really great to just be studying STEM anywhere is a really wonderful thing to be doing anyway. And if it's at Oxford, then that's brilliant. I guess thinking about wrapping up now, it would be great to hear like the one piece of advice that you'd give your younger self when you first sort of got interested in STEM, and then maybe one sort of like STEM role model that you had at the time or that you have now as well, would be brilliant just to hear from each of you guys.
I can go, but I think I guess like not to feel like so much like I don't have it within me to like do well and excel at STEM and in computer science, because I think like a lot of my time in STEM has been spent feeling a bit like, you know, is it really for me, and am I really like good enough at maths to do this? But you know, I've got this far and I've been fine, so it could have saved me like a lot of stress and anxiety about the work that I was doing, because you know, I do have it in me, and I have been having a really good time with my degree, and with role models, oh, I don't really know. Yeah, I'm not sure if
you can come back to it. You can have some time.
I'll think about it.
Yeah, I'd say mine would be a kind of similar thing. I think because I was so close to not even taking physics for A level, because I was trying to choose between like physics and biology, and I think I would just kind of I think kind of what happened was like my brother was really good at physics, or at least I felt, and so I think I just felt again like it just was something that like maybe just wasn't for me, and I was kind of like, he's like, that's like his thing, and so I'm better off doing something that isn't like his thing. I don't know. And so I think what would be really important, because obviously now it's like definitely my thing, and so I kind of think that it's sort of just not being put off by something that you think might not be for you because you think it's for someone else, I think is quite an important thing. And I think if I'd kind of realized that, there's been a few stages where I've sort of been like, oh, I shouldn't apply for that because I can imagine this person it would be so much more for them than it would be for me. So it's obviously just something that I shouldn't look at. But that's like when you kind of make those moves is actually, I feel like when you get some really rewarding things, because it's kind of like the whole thing of like, if you kind of keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got or whatever. And so it's kind of like making that move of like picking something that's maybe a bit different, but you know that you do enjoy or that you could enjoy, and it's like trying that I think is really important. And so I think that would have been a useful thing for me to know, because I could have maybe like realized sooner that kind of this is what I really want to do. And in terms of role model, I don't know, I think like when I was in like lower six, so year 12, there was like a family friend that knew someone that was doing engineering at Durham, and she was like, oh, do you want me to like let her like know, like, do you want to like meet up and like ask her some questions and stuff? And so I met up with her, and honestly I just like, I feel as though it kind of just made me so excited about the whole idea of like engineering. And I feel like it wasn't until then I was like, wow, like normal like girls do this, and like this is actually a really cool thing to do, and there's so many like amazing different projects you can work on. I think I always thought of it as like a mechanic in the garage, kind of like tinkering with a vintage car, which to be fair now I do actually really quite like the sound of, but at the time I didn't particularly. It was sort of like, why? But then she was talking about projects that she'd done with like wind turbines and like solar panels and stuff like that, which I was just like, that just sounds like incredible. And I feel as though sort of I owe it to her in a way, like she sort of for me is a bit of a role model, because it wasn't until I'd spoken to her that I got so excited, and kind of like that was sort of maybe what like started my passion for kind of engineering and like STEM. And so I kind of feel like, yeah, she'd probably, you know, Georgie, woo, but she'd probably be my role model in that. And I feel like just having more people that are kind of like going around and letting people know that like this is a really cool thing to do is really important. And so I was quite thankful for that from her.
Yeah, I think with me, because I actually didn't know what degree I wanted to do until the last minute. I think it was like beginning of September when I was supposed to be writing my personal statement, and I just couldn't make a decision. I guess I just had like a few different interests, and I really wasn't sure. And I think what I would have told myself is just to trust my gut instinct and just like trust the decisions that I make, because I was extremely indecisive and I just didn't know whether I was making the right decision. But yeah, also to just trust my ability as well. Like I almost always just thought that, oh, like I can't do this, I can't do that, which isn't always the case. I think a bit of confidence in myself would have helped just make me feel better about myself. And I guess starting at Oxford and starting chemistry in my first year, I think I would have loved to tell myself that things will fall into place, because I was terrified that it never would. And I just kind of struggled for a long time thinking like, oh, is this what my degree is going to be about? But it was fine eventually. But yeah, in terms of role models, it's probably my chemistry teacher at A level and GCSE. Yeah, she taught me at GCSE as well. She was very kind to me, and she had a lot of faith in me as well. She never put any pressure on me either. But yeah, I think I remember her telling me something like, oh, like you are a woman like pursuing a career in chemistry potentially, and I think you should really go for it. And I never forgot that she said that, and I always sometimes think about it now. But yeah, she was really supportive, and I'm really glad that I had her as my teacher, but also just someone to support me with all the decisions that I was making.
Kira, do you have a role model that you want to add?
Well, not one specific person, but I think any like woman who I see in the university who's teaching, like I had a woman who was lecturing me in computer science, and my TA for my AI course last term was a woman who's doing a PhD in computer science. And I think unfortunately it is still so rare to see women in teaching positions like that we can see in computer science. So it really inspires me to like see them, especially the PhD students, because they're only a few years older than us, and it's like, you know, that could be you in the future. And again, it's not just always like men TAing all your classes and like they're the only people you see doing computer science at higher levels than an undergrad degree. So yeah, they all really inspire me.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that we're emphasizing is that it's almost like the very everyday interactions of the very ordinary people around us, like be it someone who's studying the subject, who is teaching you, who is sort of in the context that you don't really know, but you know that they're in the industry, and therefore you know that they've had to go through such a struggle to get there, and that's inspiring. And I really resonate with that. I think like a few years ago, I don't know, like back in school in those PSHC lessons, when they asked you for a role model, I wouldn't necessarily be able to give you one of those. Like, it wasn't like Jessica Ennis Hill or I don't know, some politician, but I think it very much is the people who make the most meaningful impact. So the people in the most ordinary ways, who just show you that it's a real thing for real people, and that it's also something that could be real for you, like it's can be a part of your life. So I really like that. And I think that's such a brilliant place to end on, because I think all of you three will be role models for all of the girls who will be watching this, and just for them to see that they're a real ordinary, well, speak for yourselves, I guess, but real ordinary normal people who are in STEM, who are really successful, who have exciting prospects for the future, who had the same worries and struggles that they did thinking about it. So thank you all so much for your time and for being here. Thank you for being women in STEM and for going after the things that you love, and yeah, for taking the time to speak with us, and to the UniPear people and to the Women in Tech girls as well. So thank you all so much for your time. And I guess on that, if you are in year 13 thinking of applying to Oxford, then make sure you check out the website to sign up to receive a mentor just like one of these wonderful people, and that website is unipear.co.uk. You can also find the link in the description. And also, if you're thinking about STEM as a career, technology in particular, you want to meet some more role models, you want to see you want to go to a hackathon, you want to see an event, then definitely check out Women in Tech. They're women, is this a hyphen or a dash? I never know. Women, this one in, then the same thing again, tech.org. The link will also again be in the description. We have some wonderful events coming up for the UK chapter that we'd love for you to be involved in. So yeah, thank you all so much, and keep STEMming.